You're listening to the Blind Tiger Record Club podcast, where we champion music of all genres, and we believe vinyl is king.
Vinyl is king.
Welcome back to the Blind Tiger Record Club podcast. Today is a segment we call the B-Sides, and our guest is Damon Johnson. Hopefully you've listened to part 1 and 2 of our LP interview with Damon Johnson. If you haven't, you should listen to those first. Damon's a great storyteller. In those LP interviews, we cover Damon's entire story as a rock musician that spans 30 plus years. Whenever we do one of these long-form interviews, there's inevitably parts of the recordings that get cut because just of time, or maybe the story is a side story that, isn't really a direct part of the narrative that the artist is telling about either that portion of their career or the albums that we were discussing. Nevertheless, many times, some of this cut audio is just as interesting as the long-form interview itself. That is definitely the case with the B-Sides episode. Damon told some additional stories that are, quite frankly, just amazing. Writing songs with Sammy Hagar, getting cut with Stevie Nicks, playing guitar on one of Faith Hill's biggest hits, having a song recorded with Santana, writing and recording with Caleb Johnson and Jason Bonham. Even has an amazing story with music legend Ricky Nelson. These are all separate clips that have been pieced together for this episode, but you do get to hear the music that goes with each of these stories. Each segment stands on its own and are literally just more examples of an incredibly interesting and iconic career. So sit back and enjoy the B-Sides with Damon Johnson.
I wasn't worried. I walked into the room.
When Van Halen broke up, when Sammy left, I know that he reached out to you to do some songwriting. True?
He did.
And this is after Brother Kane as well, right?
No.
Or
Brother
this...
Kane's still together. This was between the Seeds album.
Oh, okay.
And
In that
Wishful.
3-year
yeah,
gap.
this was right there in the middle. Yeah. Yeah, it was bizarre. I remember I turned
so
on.
He really liked that song.
He really did, man. I turned on MTV News, on a Monday, and Kurt Loder, Sammy Hagar's left Van Halen, and I'm like, what? This is wild. And I was still with my first wife, and we were both like, what? That's crazy. And 2 days later, the home phone rings, and it's Sammy Hagar. His exact words were, hey man, screw those guys. I'm making a new record right now. I'm putting it out fast. Would you want to come and write a couple songs with me? And I was like, wow, yeah, man. I'm honored, flattered, like, sure. And I had the plane ticket the next day. I think it was that weekend I flew out. He picked me up at San Francisco airport in the red I Can't Drive 55 Ferrari.
So cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
And we wrote a really great song called Salvation on Sand Hill. Stayed at Sam's house, him and his beautiful family. And then he had me come back later and actually play guitar on the track. And the great footnote of that experience was, effectively, I was the guitar player in Montrose that day because Sammy's on vocals, Denny Carmassi on the drums, and Bill Church on the bass.
Wow.
Bill, the Electric Church.
Come on.
And that's on
awesome.
That's on Marching to Mars, right?
Marching to Mars, yeah. So, I say to this day, Sammy Hagar may be the single most soulful human I've had the pleasure of meeting in the music business, much less getting to write some songs with.
And such an amazing singer.
Great singer.
Still,
man.
Still got pipes.
Best.
Just as long as you believe a snake won't bite. Yeah. Taking up servants can take your life. They stuck my hands down and back without a fight.
kept writing. I wrote some more songs with John Shanks. And then that's what kind of led to the Stevie Nicks thing, which was such an unforeseen fluke. But John is very savvy. He was playing guitar for Melissa Etheridge at the time. Melissa and Stevie Nicks shared a management company. He heard through Melissa that Stevie wanted one more song to finish her record with.
And this is the
Trouble
in Shangri-La.
Trouble in Shangri-La, yeah. So John, being very savvy, he goes home and he puts together a compilation CD of like 15 to 20 songs that he's been a part of co-writing and sends it to Stevie's manager. That manager gives it to Stevie. She listens to it and falls in love with this song, Every Day, that John and I wrote. It's a lyric I wrote about my wife, Linda. And John called me. He goes, "You're not going to believe this." He goes, "But I think Stevie Nicks wants to record our song." And I'm like, "What does that mean? Like, how does that happen?" You know? So
What was the name of that song?
Every Day.
Just Every Day.
Every
right?
Day
Okay.
was the name of the song. And really special moment, man. I had basically just proposed to Linda. This was 2001. And we're at home at the apartment. We may have literally been sitting in bed eating Ben & Jerry's ice cream, watching David Letterman, and Stevie Nicks walks out and sings that song, you know, that I wrote about my new fiance. It was one of the heaviest, most special moments of
how
my life,
great.
man.
How great.
And, you know, and it was the first single, man. They shot a video. I think it wasn't a huge hit, but hey, man, listen, certainly Sharona and the publishing company were overjoyed. And I was able to get a little advance, and it helped me, you know, put a down payment on a house so my kids could come to a proper
Should we
place.
clarify if Sharona is my Sharona?
She is my Sharona.
I know a lot of people out there going, I wonder if that's the same
every
one.
way. Different Sharona
Yeah.
than the Knack Sharona, but definitely such an important.
The only two women that I've ever heard with that name
those two.
is her in the original.
Don't keep me hanging on a string. Tell me what I feel is no big thing. Don't turn away, I'm listening over and over again. Don't give me visions to explain. There are no doubts, I feel the strain of all my senses yearning over and over again. Every day I see you. Every day I need you. Every way I breathe you. On and on and on and on again.
I got one more song I want to ask about because I think it was 2002, right? When you ended up working on Angie Parra's song Cry with Faith Hill.
Very good.
Huge, huge hit.
That was a big hit. Yes, Angie Parra wrote that song. I was in LA, I think literally one of those writing trips to hook up with John Shanks. You know, Marty and I were great friends, as we are to this day. So I would always call Marty, "Hey man, I'm in town, you know, let's get together and go get a burrito somewhere." And he's like, "Hey bro, do you have your guitar?" I'm like, "Well, as a matter of fact, I do." He goes, "Well, can you come out to the house tomorrow? I want you to play on something." And I went, "Yeah, no problem." I have a sister that lives in Burbank, so I would always stay with my sister. I had a free place to stay. That was always really convenient. So I go to Marty's, and of course, man, his star is rising. He's got this awesome studio set up at his house now. He'd moved into a bigger house, and he's like, "Hey man, check this out." And so he started playing me this track. And I remember the first thing I said was, "Wow, those drums, man. Who's that drummer?" He goes, "Vinny Colaiuta." And then the vocal comes in, and I'm like, I know that voice. He goes, that's Faith Hill.
Just a couple of major.
Yeah. And
Major
then
people.
the bass, the bass is just so well done. I'm like, did you play the bass? He goes, no way, bro. That's Leland Sklar on the bass. And I'm like, wow, bro. So you're producing this? He goes, yeah, I'm producing this Faith Hill track. They heard this thing I did with Mick Jagger, and, they wanted me to do this track. He goes, you want to play guitar on this? I said, do I want to? I might have kissed him on the face right at that moment. But
An Eddie Van Halen kiss.
yeah, one of those great kisses, man. So we worked that entire day, and Marty is so skilled, man, at like seeing the whole thing, and I played a little slide guitar, an acoustic part, 2 or 3 rhythm things, and it just turned out great. And again, man, Marty's he occupies such a special place, man, in my life. I don't think I would be sitting here talking to you guys right now if it weren't for Marty.
Even with Aerosmith and other just people that he's I've never heard anything negative,
Well,
But you played every guitar part on that song.
I played every guitar on that song, and as we were talking about off mic, when Faith performed the song live, I don't think it was the Grammys. I think it was the American Music Awards, but she performed it. And she literally had 4 guitar players on stage to
cover all the parts.
Just to cover all the parts. So it's a real Faith sent out a Christmas gift that year to everyone that was a part of that record. And she sent one to our house. And I remember Linda opened it. And I was distracted, and she goes, oh my God, this is so cool. And I said, what is it? She goes, it's a blessings bowl. And I said, what is a blessings bowl? She's like, well, you write down on a piece of paper the things that you are thankful for, and you put it in this bowl, and you gather them all up. And then from time to time, you take out those pieces of paper, as a family unit. And we still have that to this day, man. It's on the special shelf in our house. And I never got to meet Faith or Tim in person, but if I ever do, man, it's going to be a great story. They'll be like, oh, you're that guy.
Yeah.
And the odds are in this town you probably will.
Maybe I will. Maybe I'll run into him sometime.
If I had just one tear running down your cheek, maybe I could cope, maybe I'd get some sleep. If I had just one moment at your expense, maybe all my misery would be well spent. Yeah. Could you cry a little, lie just a little, pretend that you're feeling a little more pain? I gave not wanting something in return, so cry just a little for me. If your love could be caged.
I was always busy. If I wasn't on tour with Alice, then I was working on either side projects or not sure about, I was always.
like with all the hats, right? Like writing, sometimes playing.
Yeah.
Tell me if this is this at the time. I've heard that you did an album with Damn Yankees that have never been released. Is that true?
It is true. It is
Was that in
true.
this time too?
That was actually early 2000s. This was
Okay.
around the time I wrote the song Every Day with John Shane.
Where is the record?
Man, it's in a vault at John Kolodner's house, or at Jack Blade's house. And I don't ever mind talking about that because for me, it was an incredible experience. I just think it wasn't a great idea.
Yeah.
The Damn Yankees, the essential ingredients there are Jack and Ted and Tommy Shaw. And Tommy wasn't able to be a fully committed part of it. He had some songs on there. He sang some background vocals. But, Kolodner brought me in, and I kind of took Tommy's place. And, I have great skill set, man. I can certainly write. We wrote some great songs together. But the sound of Tommy and Jack's voice together is its own thing.
Yeah, and that's what made Damn Yankees.
And that's what made it great.
Yeah.
And all those guys were nothing but great to me. And I'm really proud and grateful for that experience. But I have to point a little bit of a finger at not just the band, but Collidner. Also, the songs just weren't quite there.
Was Michael playing drums?
Michael was playing drums on part of it. Michael had to go back to Leonard Skinner. So Kelly Kagi from Night Ranger
from Night
came in
Ranger,
and played
yeah.
and did an amazing job.
Well, we're actually going to see Jack and Kelly in October.
Yeah.
So I'll have to ask him about that. I didn't realize that Kelly played.
Kelly did,
on that
man.
record.
And I love those guys. They were, you know,
Yeah,
they're
really
great.
nice. Everybody in that band's nice.
Yeah.
Well, so in the time frame when you were in Alice Cooper, that is one of the times when you wrote and got on the Carlos Santana record. Is that correct?
Yeah, so
That was 2005, I think.
yeah. So one thing we didn't talk about was my time in John Waite, which was
yeah.
kind of between Brother Kane and Alice Cooper. And, you know, that wouldn't have happened without another Alabama friend, Buck Johnson. Buck and I kind of came up in the Birmingham music scene together. And Buck called me. The timeline is, I can't remember if it was 2000 or 2001. I want to say 2001 because Linda and I were living in an apartment together. And that's a funny story because I'm vacuuming the carpet in this apartment. The phone rings and it's Buck, who I haven't talked to, man, in years. Hey, man, Buck Johnson, I'm out in L.A. and what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm vacuuming. And he goes, no, I mean, like, what are you doing, like, with your career right now? And I said, I'm vacuuming. Like, that's all I'm doing,
all
man.
that's going on.
There's nothing happening. So Buck was playing keys in John's band. John had a spot available. He was about to do a tour with Journey and Peter Frampton. And Buck opened that door. And so when we were on the road with John, you know, Buck was probably, to this day, man, Buck is a more aggressive songwriter than even me. I just like to write for myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's where I get the most enjoyment. I'm not,
But he's like hustling it.
he's a hustler with that, man, as you should be.
Yeah.
I should be more of a hustler.
Dave, do you realize you've met Buck? Buck was the keyboard player for Whitford St. Holmes
Oh, okay.
record, and so he's been in here several times.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So an amazing song, Just Feel Better, got its start on the road with John Waite when Buck and I would, you know, we would spend some time in the hotel room just working on some things. And he wound up taking the idea we had started to his longtime friend, Jamie Houston, whose star was also rising as a producer. Jamie had gone through an excruciating event in his personal life, and he kind of channeled that into this lyric that became Just Feel Better. And they sent me the demo when it was finished, and I just remember being, kind of made me emotional. I'm like, man, I could have never dreamt that such an incredible song would come from this thing that, you know, Buck and I started
Right.
in the hotel room. So kind of like John Shanks with the Stevie Nicks connection, Jamie Houston was working with Clive Davis. Here's Clive kind of coming back around.
Right.
Sent Clive the song, and Clive loved it, played it for Carlos Santana. Carlos loved it. And I think Clive, it was his idea. He said, man, you should get Steven Tyler to sing this on your record. And that's what happened.
She said I feel stranded, and I can't tell anymore if I'm coming or I'm going. It's not how I planned it. I got a key to the door, but it just won't open. And I know, part of me says let it go. That life happens for a reason.
it's interesting. Now I just put that together. So John produced a band that I had called Golden State. Amazing band. And John did such a great job with them. And Clive Davis was going to sign them and flew us all to New York. And we did the showcase. And that day he got news that another record that he'd put out with the guy had just gone to radio and it failed. And they said, why did it fail? And the whole staff was there, and they're like, well, we think it's because he's too old. Well, one of the guys in this band that I had stayed up all night in Los Angeles to play another show, got on the red eye, flew to New York. We had to move the showcase because Whitney Houston was having a meltdown. So we were set up in one venue, had to tear down, go into another venue to do the showcase.
In New York?
In New York. And by the time this guy played the show, he'd been up for 48 hours. And Clive literally said, how old's that guy? and the guy was like, and Shanks was like, or the A&R guy at the time, Shanks didn't go with us. A&R guy was like, I don't know. They get in the car, they're driving around, they get the phone call, and they say it's because they're too old. He put 2 and 2 together. He's like, well, this guy's too old. That guy that I just saw that looks like a train wreck is too old. Didn't sign the band.
Oh, man.
Heartbreaking.
This reminds me of a story. Out of all the podcast interviews I've done over the pandemic in the last 18 months, I don't think I've said this to one person.
Breaking news.
So this is an important thing. And there's some music here that you're going to have to hear at some point. But between Brother Kane and John Waite, the same batch of songs that came from the John Shanks session where we wrote Every Day, I had co-written with some other people, Taylor Rhodes, who I co-wrote That Don't Satisfy Me with on the first Brother Kane record, and a song on Wishpool. We had written a couple things. I basically put a batch of songs together that might have been a solo record. And these songs were super simple, not guitar heavy, but they were they would have fit on the radio on any station that was playing Everclear and Sugar Ray. Remember all those songs that would have like the drum loop,
Yeah.
right? Mm-hmm. And then I got immediate attention with these songs because they were really good. It sounded nothing like Brother Kane.
Right.
I still wasn't really going back to like the Guitar Hero thing at all, man. I was just writing. We showcased for Clive Davis, this band. I called the band Dragonfly. And it was just me and some guys I knew in Birmingham. I just like, hey, man, I need you to play these songs.
Did you showcase in New York or where'd you do
We
it?
flew to New York.
Yeah.
We flew to New York. Am I right? Like the Mercury Lounge, isn't that really small?
Yep.
Super small? Yeah. That's where we went and we played. And I just remember I was super skinny. I had on my white, tank top, the wife beater shirt, and, playing I think I was still playing my Les Paul. But Clive pulled up in the limo. The A&R guy at his label loved the songs. And Clive pulled up, and, it was a big deal. Anytime Clive shows up anywhere. And, it was like, okay, be ready. The car is here. So as soon as Clive walks in, you guys start. And so we did it. And we played, I think, 6 songs. And I put the guitar down. And I could see Clive, like, getting up and putting his coat back on. He's about to split. And the guy says, hey, man, you should come over and say hi to Clive. I said, of course. So I go over, and there he is, Clive Davis. And he said, Damon, thank you so much for playing for me. He goes, I want you to never forget that you're a great rock artist. This is not you. You're a rock and roll artist. You need to stay that because you're very, very talented. And he split.
Wow.
I didn't play, much less listen to those songs again, ever, after getting that from Clive Davis. And then, the John Waite call came, and then the Alice Cooper and all that kind of stuff.
So Damon, you just did another record with a very capable young man, vocalist named Caleb Johnson.
No relation.
No relation.
No relation. Which I find hard to believe, man, because we definitely speak the same language, and we kind of grew up in similar type of environments. But yeah, Caleb is a mega talent. We met through a mutual friend who suggested we get together and try and write. Caleb was basically, he won the final year of American Idol before they took that break.
Right.
They took a long break, and then it came back with
They
Lionel,
did on a
Lionel Richie.
different network, I think, or something maybe.
I don't know. But I remember friends of mine even telling me about Caleb. They're like, man, they got this kid from South Carolina on the show, and all he wants to sing is classic rock, and he's got this big voice. And so Caleb came over to my house, and, I haven't had too many experiences where the moment someone opens their mouth to sing, you just go, oh, wow. What? Like, I get, like in that minute you go, okay, well, no wonder he won American Idol and he's had all this stuff, because I knew he'd already been singing some with Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
Okay, yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah, so this was actually several years ago, and we wrote a few songs because he had already had a record nearly in the can, and I was sort of at the end of that. And we wrote this song that was really special called Hurricane. I knew it was special. I just knew it. We wrote 2 or 3 other ones that were really cool. They were maybe a little Black Crowes derivative, which we both love.
Yeah.
But this
The Hurricane's solid.
it's really
Yeah,
great,
solid.
man. There's
Great
something about
song.
his manager called me as soon as he heard the demo, and he's like, "Oh my God!" He goes, "It may not be the right fit for this record we're working on at that time," which was like 4 years ago. But he said,
One day.
"It is like, wow, one day."
Yeah.
So back around, I guess it was October of 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, October 2020. Caleb called and said, "Listen, man, I'm doing this. I'm putting a band together. I'm going into Blackbird, as you guys know, is a huge studio here in Nashville. So many great records have been cut there." And he goes, "Man, I'd love for you to play on 3 or 4 songs, And I'm like, "Awesome, man." He goes, "I got a killer band." And he goes, "Oh, Jason Bonham's going to play drums." And I was like, "What?" So such a great day in the studio. So blown away, man, with like the team that Caleb put together, because he literally he's basically, quote, produced it himself. And all he did to produce it was
Basically, get a bunch of great players.
get some
Get the
talented guys in
best.
the room and go count it off.
Yeah.
Make sure the mics are all turned on and go. And that's literally what happened. So
So you just had an engineer at the board, kind of
yeah,
that worked at Blackbird.
Brandon Bell.
Oh, Brandon. Okay.
Yeah, it's mega talent, man.
Yeah.
He's worked on a lot of records that I love as a fan. Brandy Carlisle and Jason Isbell, stuff like that. And he was great. The studio was great. And then later, Caleb goes, "Oh, I'm going to get Vance Powell to mix it." And I was like, "Hell yeah, dude!" I don't know Vance, but I have a bunch of records that he's worked on. So the cherry on top, man, was the day that Caleb sent me the mixes, and in particular Hurricane, which of course I'm partial to. But I was so thrilled with how great it sounded. Because listen, man, I've had songs that I've co-written, or that people have recorded my songs. Some we've talked about today that I wasn't really that blown away, with the mix and the sound and the production and all that. And I just know my wife and I would go for walks, and she'd be listening to a podcast, and I would just have Hurricane on repeat, man, on my headphones, just loving it and just so proud.
Yeah, it sounds great.
It does sound awesome, and the whole record really does sound good. And I know you're featured on a couple of other songs as well. And then I think you're even in the video for Hurricane and all that. So
Yeah, I am, man. Caleb was super generous. It's like even my fan base, they picked up on it because, if you type in Damon Johnson now on Spotify or Apple Music, it pulls up those songs as well, because he listed Jason and I, as being featured on the song. So he really
is it cool recording with Jason too?
Jason was incredible, man. I'd had one interaction with Jason 100 years ago. He was familiar with Brother Kane. He heard our first record kind of before anybody else did, because he'd been working with my friend Marty Fredrickson. And I saw Jason one time in L.A. and
Was that on the Bonham record that he was working with Marty?
yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we went to some event, and Jason was there, and he came right up to my face and started singing one of my songs back to me, And he's just such a great player, and obviously his legacy is special. And I'm just really impressed with his career arc, and all the things that he's done. And we just, man, we had a great day in the studio. I'd record with that guy anytime, anywhere.
An interesting connection too that Jason now plays with Sammy.
Yeah.
Right. So
Jason's been playing drums with Sammy Hagar for several years now, and that's a great fit too.
absolutely.
Sweet rolling thunder. This jealous night turns into day. Coming home on that horizon. Come and wipe your tears away. And I see you, and I feel you, and I know you. Don't be afraid. Let me hold you. Let me guide you. I'll bring you shelter from the sky. Coming down like a hurricane. Gonna take what the good Lord brings. Shots fired while the church choir sings. Left alone in the driving rain. Tell me, people, what do you say when you stand in the eye of a hurricane?
So, as we mentioned before, Damon's got tons of stories. Some of you've heard tonight that really have to do with the making of records that he was on and stuff. And we share a common kind of group of I don't know what he's called friends, but the story happened where Damon told me in my office. And it was really one of those things that gave me chills because, Damon, I'm going to let you go ahead and tell the story about Ricky Nelson, who, as we all know, tragically perished in a plane crash, and you were
Yeah, it's an incredible story. It's so random, but so in 1985 and 86, I was playing guitar in a house band in Guntersville, Alabama. It was a band called Headline, and the venue was called PJ's Alley. And the guy that put the band together and opened that nightclub was named Pat Upton. Pat Upton was from that part of the country, literally went to high school with my mother. But Pat had a hit in 1970 that you guys know. His band was called The Spiral Staircase, and the song was I Love You More Today Than Yesterday.
big hit.
Huge hit. One of the great
Yeah.
pop
Great song.
70s
Yeah,
pop
yeah, great
songs
song.
ever, man. So Pat had opened this club. We would play 4 nights a week, and it was awesome. It was awesome. But Pat had, before he moved back to Alabama from California, he was a member of Ricky Nelson's Stone Canyon band that toured with him and performed with him. And Pat would play rhythm guitar and sing all these amazing high background vocals. Ricky was touring. He was out doing some dates. This was December of 1985. And I remember Pat telling us all one day, he said, hey, man, so Ricky's going to come to town and do a couple of shows for the club, which we knew was going to be great for Pat and for the town, man, because Guntersville, Alabama's got, I don't know, maybe 30,000 people. Big deal. Ricky Nelson, December 29, December 30 were the 2 nights he was going to play. And he did play. And it was incredible. Both nights were packed. You know, my parents came. They had to come, you know, because my mom was a fan. And it was a great little band he had, man. You know, he played guitar all night. He had a lead player, stand-up bass, drummer. That's it. Tour manager, who was great, and then Ricky's fiance was traveling with them. And they had chartered this little DC-10 plane that they flew into this tiny little airstrip right there in Guntersville. So the morning of the 31st, because we opened the show, you know, the headline went on before Ricky both nights. You know, it was great. So the morning of the 31st, I was at my apartment and Pat Upton called me because we had like a van that we used. And he said, hey man, can you go pick up the guys at the Holiday Inn? That was only, you know, a hotel there in Guntersville. Can you pick them up, you know, or, you know, help get them out to the airport? And I was like, yeah, of course. So we all convened at that little airstrip in Guntersville, and I think every one of the headline guys was there. I don't think Pat's wife came for that. But anyway, it was a good hang, a lot of hugs and high fives, and like, let's do it again. We had such a great time. And I had this very surreal moment where they were on the plane, they raised up the ladder. It was a, double prop plane.
So you drove them, though, from the hotel
Yeah.
to the airport.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah. Me and the guys, I think one of the other guys had their personal car, and we just got everybody out there. So there was this moment where the propellers had started, they're getting ready to taxi, and then Pat found a briefcase that was still in the little airport hangar that belonged to one of them. So Pat's like, hey, Damon, run out there and tell them, they left this. So, literally I'm like waving at the pilot and holding up this briefcase, and I could see the pilot. He was like, oh, okay. So they dropped the ladder again, and I go up the stairs onto the plane, and the tour manager was sitting up at the front, and I turned around and looked down at those 12 seats. And of course, they're like, come on, man, go with us. It's going to be great. We're going to Dallas to play our New Year's Eve show. And I was like, oh, that'd be awesome, man. But we got to, we have our own big New Year's Eve show. And they took off, and we all went back to, I went back to my apartment to get ready for the show, later that night. And I remember I was in the bathroom about 3 hours later, and our neighbor downstairs came running up the stairs, and he was screaming. And I thought maybe there was a fire. I remember being really scared, like, oh my God, something's really wrong. And he just goes, they're gone. They're gone. They're gone. And the news had just hit that the plane had crashed, and they all perished.
So you were probably literally the last person to see them that was not on that plane.
There's no question about it that I was the last person to see Ricky Nelson live. It
All
was
right.
just
So as the arms, by the hair on my arms stand up, to add a little Twilight Zone to this story, I used to work with Matt and Gunnar Nelson, and to this day, I still get mail every once in a while in my office, an old some fan that's got old address or some kind of thing. Damon was in my office, and we're having a chat, and I'm making notes on on the back of this letter, this piece of mail. And I had no idea this was going to come up, because it was the first time Damon ever told me this story. So Damon stands up and he's leaving, and somehow the story came up, and he told it to me. And I didn't think you knew that I used to work with the boys.
No, I didn't. Know.
So I'm listening to tell this story. He tells me this story. I turn over the letter that's in my hand, and it's addressed to Matthew and Gunnar Nelson.
Like in that exact moment.
It's like, come on.
It just doesn't get any stranger than that.
Yeah, I almost ran out of the building. So I just wanted to, that story, I mean, that's such, Ricky was such the whole family with Ozzy and Harriet and everything, and him being one of the very, very first teen idols. Along with Elvis.
Yeah.
It's just a cool story, and I just wanted to make sure that we got a chance to share it with everybody.
Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Ain't no cure for the dead man walking blues. 1 foot tapping, one in the grave. I'm gonna sing the song till my dying day. Gonna keep on singing while the news keeps tightening. My heart will keep beating like the thundering lightning. Oh Lord, what I'm gonna do? Ain't no cure for the dead man walking blues. Gotta keep giving, the devil is tools. Ain't no cure for the dead man walking blues. For the dead man walking blues. For the dead man walking blues.
Well, we hope you enjoyed the B-Sides with Damon Johnson. Don't forget, you can grab Damon Johnson's album, Memoirs of an Uprising, at blindtigerrecordclub.com. You will also be able to get his new album, Battle Lessons, autographed through our club as soon as it's released. Our radio show On Air will start back at Lightning 100 in Nashville, Tennessee, 100.1 FM on September 20th. You can stream the show at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time at lightning100.com. You can also get more information about the show at lightning100.com/blindtiger. The recast will be available on our podcast channels after it airs on Lightning 100. It is, of course, available on all major podcast platforms and is also available to stream right from our website, blindtigerrecordclub.com. This new episode will be a discussion of the Blind Tiger Record Club's September Records of the Month. So mark your calendar, September 20th. We'll be back both on air and here at the podcast. Please follow the podcast, like us, leave reviews and comments. Those help us a ton. Tell your friends about the show. Stay up to date on all that we're doing by signing up for our email list at the website. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook, some of the best places to stay up to date on all that we're doing. At Blind Tiger Record Club, we love music, and if you're listening to this show, we assume that you do too. So until next time, keep the wax spinning.